Kirk and Steve. I love this guy. Great fun yesterday, but kind of like the fun you have when you try heroin and then vomit as you're coming down. He doesn't like that I like him, but I can't help it. I love this guy. It's not necessary. Hold on. I listened to the podcast and received your message, which said, so that's the one you just said, right? I'm not sure I've ever received such a generous offer, except perhaps for when someone actually pays me for my time. I'm also tickled pink that you're both so evolved as to grudgingly profess your fondness for me. And you may have possibly even made it all the way up to, what is that? I didn't even pronounce that for me, Steve. I can't say that.
Oh, I haven't.
Australopithecus. What is that? You should know that. That's your kind of word.
Oh, is it Australopithecine? He's saying that you're an earlier species of hominid. I think he's going beyond Neanderthal a few hundred million years earlier.
I love this guy. And while I'm willing to overlook the fact that I'm a subject of derision among your highly enlightened audience, behold, my field is fresh out of fucks to give. Allow me to clarify a few things.
All right, so this is the rundown, KMS rundown for October 9th. Another week of the Kirk and Steve show. We had a lot of great guests. And I guess I got to go to Visionless Dave first because one of the guests, Soroff, you guys had a little, little match off here you had on Twitter, one-on-one, going back and forth. So this is your guy. This lib couldn't handle it, couldn't take it. And he ran away from Steve and from Visionless Dave and from Kirk, obviously. What a guy, VD. Well done.
Yeah, I hate patting myself on the back, but right after he came on, we got Marble Mouth over here, Ziggy Robinson, saying, oh, he should be on every week. Privately, I was telling people, there's no way this guy can make it. Like, he was a really entertaining interview. And I kind of have the same reaction as Kirk, where like anytime they read something that he writes, I just laugh. Like, he's just an absurd character. I've done some digging on him. I've watched a bunch of his hit TV appearances on Boston Public Television. Yeah. Unfortunately, the audio for his radio show is gone. I'd love to hear that. I've read a bunch of his articles. He actually is a good writer. That's undeniable.
The email was incredible.
The email was incredible. If he's just firing off emails like that, like a couple times a day, like I need to get on his mailing list because I don't know. It definitely seems like the type of guy, if you email him, he'd respond no matter what. But he is kind of the other side of the coin of S.C. Robinson. He's just this crazy liberal. You could tell he makes Steve's blood boil a little bit. During the interview, Kirk's like, oh, I like this guy. And you can kind of tell Steve's like, yeah, me too. But deep down, SC is just like this fucking idiot, he wants to crush him. But, like I said, he made it one day on Twitter. He's a big like every positive tweet about him, retweet all positive praises. Yep. Surely he won't come crawling back into the world. They never do that, the people that say they're gone. But overall, I think he was a great guest, kind of just a random one. You wouldn't have really seen it coming, and credit to him for coming on. But I've got a water bottle full of his tears right now, and I'm very hydrated. So hopefully he comes back,
Ziggy, you love this guy. You were in the DMs. You were all excited, probably because he just pissed Steve off so bad.
That was part of it, yeah.
Yeah, you're
fine. No, I definitely loved Soroff. But before we get there, kind of like how I think Tuesday Kirk started the show with some housekeeping. I wanted to get a little housekeeping out of the way. So for those who didn't hear,
what's the definition of housekeeping?
Don't worry about it. It's anything outside, that happens inside or outside of the house. Steve was wrong there. I looked it up. Steve was wrong there. So last night, Thursday night, for those who didn't see, Red went on the Intel show. And on that show, he said, and I quote, that Ziggy is a gutless pussy, a snake. I can't be trusted. I'd sell you out in a second. I would stab you in the back. I'm not likable, and I'm an asshole. I cannot argue with much of that, to be honest with you.
And I love you. I think
I will. That's true. You did say you love me, but you also said you hated me. So yeah, I can't argue with much. Except I don't really stab people in the back, as you know, Red. I stab people right in the front with my eyes locked. Right in the heart. Yeah. So I'm not a backstabber. But other than that, you're actually pretty accurate. But I would rather be called all of those things than what VD was called this week by Kirk, which was former #1 Minifan, former, way down in the charts and one spot below DEC. So now that we got that housekeeping out of the way, my thoughts on Jonathon
it's better to be a has-been than a never-been, Ziggy.
Sure.
You know.
Sure. Well, what's your phrase? Chop water, carry wood.
Chop
carry
water,
wood, chop water, chase clout.
Yeah. Chop water.
Back to the main show. So I thought Joso was honestly, from right in the beginning. That's what Kirk called him. Right from the beginning, this guy I knew was electric. He was in on the joke, triggered Steve, which obviously I love. He knew his pop culture and his movies. And he probably knows Murchison. So there's always that. So I think he was like the perfect guest, and he's local. So if things shook out differently, I think it could have, or maybe it will work for him to come in studio at some point. I think that'd be great. I think when Kirk was talking to him, I counted 5 multiple times where Kirk did his classic. I like this guy. I can't help it. I like him. Yep. So you knew like Kirk was in on it. Steve was a little wishy-washy. We can get to that in a bit. The funny part for me was like before the interview started, Kirk said that it would go one of 2 ways. Either he'd be an enemy of the show, or one day he'd be sitting in Mike's chair. And it was early on in the interview, Kirk asked him, like, is it too early to tell if you got pregnant from Curtatone when you interviewed him? In Soroff, to his credit, like played along with it, gave kind of a joke answer. So that's when you knew like he was in on the joke. It was going to be lighthearted for the most. I mean, it got pretty heated, but they were still making jokes at each other's expense or at their own. At least Kirk was at his own expense. But to me, the big takeaway is that Steve wants no part of him in the world. Wednesday, really? No, don't shake your head. You always do that when I make a good point, VD. Wow. Wednesday, he said that Jonathon didn't seem interested. When Kirk asked, like, oh, did you follow up? The reason he said that he didn't seem interested was because he didn't respond to a text, which we now know he was writing that very detailed email, which clearly you don't write that long of an email if you're not actually interested, if you don't actually care. Because if you really wanted to be not talk to you anymore, you would just say, don't contact me again. And then on Thursday, yesterday, I think the second taping, after they read the email in the morning, Kirk asked Steve if he heard back from him, and Steve said no. And then Steve, for some reason, lied and said he didn't see any tweets from him. It would take 1 second to go to his Twitter account and see he retweeted like 3 Minifans. He retweeted the video of Kirk reading the email. So he clearly is still involved. He's still engaged. I just think Steve's intimidated by someone who's definitely a bigger condescending prick than he is, and definitely can match wits with him. So I would love to have him back. I don't know if it will happen because I think he's got probably some skeletons in the closet that the Minifans like VD will definitely dig up if they haven't already have him locked in the chamber.
Wow. I mean, that is insane liberal vomit, which is exactly what he brought to the show. If you think he's in on the joke, no one that writes that email is in on the joke. He's just fucking legitimately crazy. So I think crazy, though. I think,
there's some good crazy there, absolutely.
There's good crazy there, but that would be like saying like William Bendison was in on the joke. Like, no, people like that are oblivious to the joke, and that's what makes them great. So I think you're giving him too much credit there. As far as the tweet allegations, Steve meant he didn't see any original tweets from him. A retweet doesn't count as a Ziggy tweet.
Kirk asked if Steve heard back, and he said no, I didn't see any tweets from him. That would imply he was implying that he didn't even respond to them. He was like the second person.
So you're also. Well, I don't want this to turn into a Steve derangement syndrome episode, but you're also saying he was supposed to predict the future, that Jonathon was sending him an email when he ignored the text. That's
no, I wasn't implying that. I was just saying if someone doesn't respond to your text, it doesn't mean that they're not interested. It just means they have yet to respond. Or one of the possibilities is they have yet to respond.
I will say
that narrative that he didn't want, that he was kind of poo-pooing.
But Steve was correct. He's not interested in the debate. So
in the debate, but TBD if he's interested in being involved in the Miniverse.
He does want to get paid. He said that at the top of the email too. Like, he wants to be compensated for his time. I think that was a majority of the reason for him probably saying no. I would say if he wants to be compensated. So I think that was one of the reasons. But also VD, Steve has a terrible track record of getting a hold of somebody. If he really wants to get a hold of somebody, like that one email a month, okay,
he may call. He may even go as far as calling.
He may even call. Like when it came to Tom Hartman, he would send he sent one email in December and then that was it. You know what I mean? Like he does that thing where he's like, yeah, I reached out. I mean, I sent that email that one time. Like, I think Steve's a little scared of this guy.
Yeah. No. Does Tom Hartman want any part of Steve? No. It's optics. If you're the fucking alpha in the relationship, you can't be blowing up someone's email, begging them to come on the show. I mean, it's the Kirk Minahan show. Like, this guy is a nobody. There's no reason for Steve to be begging him for a response. It's like we hear in the Portnoy podcast, which we'll get to later. If Steve Robinson calls you, you step out of your meeting, you answer the call, you answer the email. I mean, it's not, if you're not going to do that, then you're not worth the time.
You do that because you know he's only going to do it once because he doesn't have the motivation to do it more than once.
I'll say one thing. Anytime I've messaged Steve, emailed him, he's been very responsive. Ziggy, I know he's been very responsive to your emails. So these are just more toothless accusations coming from you, Ziggy. So do they make dentures for dogs? Because I'm getting sick of your toothless accusations.
Wow. Okay, so moving on to another guest. We had Stephen Hayden.
Wait, we're done with Soroff?
well, I mean, you have more
It's Ziggy
I had
Hero.
plenty
Give him
on my
5 more
guy.
minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I had plenty on him.
Because
for example,
he boxed out Stephen. I'm sorry.
I thought it was very, very astute observation by Kirk to point out that it looked like Steve was ready for war, because that was kind of a funny image of Steve, like having clenched fist, rolling up the sleeves, emptying the bladder in a piss bottle just to make sure there were no distractions. But no, we can move on. I just thought he was very electric, carried the week, star of the show. He was a Gordian knot of incomprehensible contradictions.
That was a nice one. Yes, that was a good job.
I think his initial response afterwards.
I will say one thing, and then I'll give it to you, Red. I do think, and I do want this to happen. Getting him in studio, I think, would be amazing. Like if they could get him in studio whenever, it doesn't have to be soon, whenever all this nonsense is over. But I just think that would change the dynamic so much. And I just need a camera on Steve. I need a camera on him, and I need a camera on Kirk. Just watching that interaction, because just gold would come out of that.
And Soroff would make like the most ridiculous faces and responses.
Oh yeah, and his outfit and his posture. He'd be rolling his eyes. So,
I just remember once you said earlier, like, you don't think you thought his email was a serious attempt to tell them.
No, everything's satire. Everything's satire.
Oh yeah,
when the good job investigating, I taught you LVD. You dug deep and you found that audio and that video of the TV and radio he's done. Kirk and Steve were saying that he claimed that he's done more TV and radio in 30 years than they have. The actual claim was the actual claim was that he's done more TV and radio than they have watched in their lives, which is clearly hyperbole, which goes to my point that there is a lot of tongue in cheek in that email, just like there was in the article that he wrote that kind of got them up in a tither.
There's tongue in cheek, but he absolutely thinks he's one of the top 10 most important people in Boston. Like, he thinks
absolutely
culture flows through him. I read a lot of his work. Unfortunately, I wasted a lot of hours doing it. This guy thinks he is really important.
All right, so let me ask you a question then. Do you don't think he wants to be involved, or you don't think he will be involved? Do you want him to be involved?
Yeah, like I just said, I'd love to get him in studio for something. I'm anxiously awaiting for him to come crawling back. People like this don't really disappear. So I'm excited to see what happens in the future. The dynamic between him and Steve, with Kirk as the master instigator puppeteer, like, that's just going to be gold every time.
Yeah. Kirk was almost refereeing part of that. But okay, so we can all agree we at least want him back in some capacity.
Oh, absolutely.
Not as much as you, but yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that I do love, like, he's a better version of Alex Reamer from somebody who's from the EEI days. Like, He's
actually knows what he's talking about.
Right. He's a smarter version of Reamer who will actually be able to put up a fight. Right. Like, he's a little bit of a unicorn, and not just because of his haircut. He's a little bit of a unicorn because he's an intelligent, angry liberal who wants to fight. That's very hard to find. Usually they just want to do NPR and just kind of quietly talking to the microphone. So
my issue with him is he does I eliminate someone completely when they go with it's just a joke excuse, or this is just satire. Like, even Ziggy, you admitted, like, that's just a lame thing to do. Like, why not just go full in, just be the angry liberal, and go check out this guy's Instagram. He lives a wild life, and
he puts Reamer to shame with the with his life experiences. We'll just say.
He's a big hump day guy too.
That Instagram is not safe for work.
No, it's not.
I'll just say that, and then the last thing I'll say on him is the only thing thinner than his skin is the hair on his head. So I don't know. I look forward to him crawling back into the world.
Listen, as a bald guy, I'll tell you, when you're holding on, he's holding on for dear life. What he's got, you just got to let it go. It's running away from you.
Let it go.
I think Kirk summed it up best when he said in 3 weeks he'll be sitting in kitty litter with Tim and Canton.
All right, so we also had a few other guests this week. We had Stephen Hayden, which I'm sure VD hated, not for the music conversation, but then Steve had no way to contribute to the conversation at all. So there was no Steve there, so I'm sure Ziggy loved that. I just enjoyed, Kirk being able to talk about music with somebody of intelligence and be able to talk about Van Halen. It was an awesome guest. It was my favorite guest of the week. It wasn't anything clip worthy. It wasn't anything outrageous. It was just a good conversation that Kirk isn't able to have with Steve or Mike or anybody else he's had in the room, really. So Ziggy, you must have been a big fan.
Yeah, it was
not having Steve being able to participate.
Yeah, of course. It was a nice change of pace from the Kirk and Steve show. It was just a relaxing listen, like you said, Red. I re-listened to almost every episode. I skipped through this on the re-listen because there wasn't anything like I felt like I needed to hear a second time, but it was just a nice, easy listening to two people talking about something that they know a lot about. And honestly, I could care less about Van Halen, but I still enjoy Kirk talking to people that are knowledgeable about something he's also knowledgeable about. Obviously it harkens back to the Enough About Me days. Here's a controversial take. I think Kirk is a really good interviewer. Probably not said enough. So I would love. So they used to have, when the show started, they used to have a lot more guests, and most of them were controversial or confrontational. And then I think naturally they had a hard time booking those kind of guests. I would love a non-confrontational, just kind of a deep dive interview like this once a week, once every other week or something. Because it's just a muscle that Kirk has that he doesn't get to flex much. And it's just, for me, it's an easy listen, which I appreciate.
Yeah. And this is probably not good because I'm disagreeing with Kirk. I know Kirk he thinks that the fan base strictly wants those confrontational interviews. I agree with you, Ziggy. I love when he's able to talk to somebody, in a way where he just has a passion about the subject as they do. I think that's really good. Once a week, once every other week would be awesome. So I don't always need that confrontation. VD, I think you actually did enjoy this interview, didn't you?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head when it's like anything Kirk is interested in, that conversation is just going to be interesting. And it was kind of cool to see them like bouncing each other, like not in a hardo way, but it's something you do when you're talking to anyone that is interested in the same thing as you, where it's like, oh, well, did you see this? Did you see this? And Ziggy, you had a tweet about it, but you could tell that the interview, they probably could have ended 10 minutes earlier, but they were just vibing so well that it was like, oh, and this and this. So I would expect he'll come back, not regularly, but that's a guy that's, a friend of the show. And I think it speaks to kind of the newer format that is starting to emerge in Mike's absence of just having a random couple guests on every week. And it's a new thing, but I definitely like it. It's interesting. It shakes things up. And I'm enjoying it.
Ziggy, are you willing to give Steve credit for landing the plane on a couple of these guests this week and getting them in the
on the show? Real quick.
Go ahead, VD.
I want to address your allegations that I probably didn't like this because Steve didn't talk. No,
I hate when Red throws those out. Those
what? I was just.
There's no reason. You're not funny. There's no reason to.
No, it's a fair point. It's a fair point. And I think even Kirk gets confused with this. I'm a huge Big Steve guy, but there's probably no greater compliment to Kirk than saying, oh, I love Big Steve, because Howie may have plucked him out of obscurity up in Maine, but Kirk plucked him out of obscurity and made him interesting. And Steve would be the first guy to tell you that. He brings out the best of everyone he's around, Kirk, but the development from Steve, if you go back and watch old Howie Carr stuff, this is an obvious thing to say, but just even the way early in Friday's show where they're doing the Robinson Academy thing, and he's even getting better at just going back and forth with random little banter stuff, and even how he deals with callers now. Like, I think early in the shows, he never would have done that. He's just growing in confidence a little bit, and he's figured out what he wants to bring to the show. And all of that is credit to Kirk. So I enjoy his great instinct to step back and not step on the conversation like maybe a previous member of the show would have been. That is one thing I will say, which is, insensitive at the moment, but I do enjoy having the interviews without Mike, just because, and even Steve was guilty a little bit of it this week with Soroff, but it's just so awkward with a phone interview, especially when there's multiple people on one side trying to talk to one person on the other. So I think it was good of Steve to kind of step back for that one, especially. And obviously he had nothing to add. He's not a music guy. What are you you can't blame him for that.
I was curious how you were going to flip this around and spin it positive to Steve, and you landed that, man.
It would have been pretty great if Steve did actually try to chime in and ask like one question, because it would have been so out of place, and Kirk would have made fun of him. And I kind of regret that didn't happen.
Yeah, if you had a Skinnerd question, Sweet Home Alabama, that would have been hilarious.
Ziggy wants more Steve. Put that on the record, Warden. Clip it.
No, I never said that.
So our other guest this week was
before.
Sorry,
move on.
Ziggy has to get the last word. Ziggy has
please,
always. The floor is mine. Thank you very much. And here's why, Red. Here's why I want to bring it up.
Please.
We ended that episode with the great clip of Kirk singing "Ain't Talking About Love," which I am confident was put in there because you tweeted that clip out the day before.
No.
And that tweet, for Red's sake, went viral. I think it had more than 5 likes, which for Red, considering everyone had you muted for a long time, it's viral. And I saw some people giving Steve some instincts for putting that in. That was definitely Kirk that saw it, sent it to Steve. Steve put it in. That was a nice touch.
Thank you. I think
program director Red, good job on that one.
Thank you. I don't like any positive words about me. So this is making me incredibly uncomfortable. So thank you a lot, Ziggy.
Tell him the motto. Tell him the motto. Chop wood, carry water.
That was all-time moment on the show. As soon as you see the news about Eddie Van Halen, like that was the first thing I thought of. And
Can I ask a question?
I've been a big Van Halen fan too.
How did you have that so quickly? Because you had that like really quick. Did you remember that really clearly?
So I remember that because it was how we closed out one of our rundown shows. Because we had access to the video at that time, the show video, and that's how we closed it out. Because I thought it was just such an awesome moment at the time. Like that stuck out.
It was
very good.
I even saw in the Discord where there's a lot of anti-call narrative. Even people in the Discord were like, "Oh, that was an all-time show moment." At first not realizing that it had already happened, but then kind of tying it all together and being like, oh yeah, that was a really great moment in the show you might have never thought about otherwise after it happened if he hadn't passed. So that was a good find.
It was very good. I made sure to DM Justin as soon as I thought of that. So my hope is, as a Justin guy, my hope is that maybe Justin put in the word and sent it up to Steve and said, hey, we should pull this. Probably Kirk's going to want it or whatever, like that was very, very cool. Very cool. All right, what were we talking about, Ziggy? You totally sidetracked me.
I don't know. I'm biting my tongue on another final point I can make. We can move on to Big Cat.
Okay, so we're gonna get to Big Cat because VD's got some spicy stuff about Big Cat that I'm excited about. Ziggy, yes. Big Cat this week. Are you loving still the Big Cat moments on the show, or is it getting to be too much? I know he's come on a few times now. Is this too much Big Cat for you?
Sorry, I can't. I got to get back to that last thing. It's going to eat away at me. So
backtracking.
It was a great call to put that Van Halen audio in, and then Steve definitely got greedy, and then the next day put in the Mike Pence audio at the very end of the episode. And
yes, he did. No, that's a good point.
That was annoying. Sorry. All right. So Big Cat.
You ready to get him? Okay.
I would not have
derangement.
Yep. Big Cat, I think 2 weeks ago, whenever he was last on, it felt very awkward between him and Steve. I mean, Big Cat and Kirk's always great. Like they're on the same page, and obviously it helps that Big Cat listens and can throw in the reference. But in the past, I've felt like Steve and Dan it was just like an awkward relationship. But this time I noticed Steve was leaning into the S.E. Robinson shtick, which was like, it was pretty funny. Like talking about the NBA, like get woke, go broke, like debate, where they were both kind of playing up their sides of the argument. So I did enjoy that. Yeah, it's always nice to have Big Cat on. Like I said with the other interview with Stephen Hayden, it's relaxing. It's easy to listen.
But it's too much Steve during that, is what you're saying.
No, I mean not necessarily. I mean the best part was obviously the music talk where he was silent, like the Fleetwood Mac stuff. But it was fine.
And
Ziggy, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. Steve was pretty great with Big Cat. He kind of stepped into that role well. They had a good back and forth. So you hit the nail on the head with that one. I like Big Cat. He's great every time he comes on. Like, you know what you're going to get from him. I have personal issues outside of the KMS world with Big Cat, just in regards to Pardon My Take and some other stuff. Does he a little bit? Yes. But what are you going to do? He's an actual friend of the show. I believe that he occasionally listens to the show. He's a great guy. Like, you know, if you have bad words to say about Big Cat, then there's something wrong with you. Is it as exciting as a Jonathon Soroff appearance? Surprisingly, no. Surprisingly, a 20-year plus columnist for the Improper Bostonian is somehow, to me, a little more exciting than like one of the biggest podcasters in the world. But I don't know. That's probably just how my brain works. But yeah, he's great. I appreciate. He's a good ally to have at Barstool. And
big time. Yeah.
I do think Steve, I'll say about him is anytime they've had kind of those interactions with Big Cat or other Barstool people, like Steve, he goes a little bit out of his way to step into his S.E. Robinson role. And you can tell he wants the Barstool people to like him. Like, he kind of had the unfortunate situation of having to always have an adversarial relationship early on, not at his own fault. Like, he's had to try to kind of win support back just because, you know, Portnoy instantly didn't like him, and he's just the butt of a lot of the Barstool jokes. But you can tell Big Cat understands the fascination of S.E. Robinson and what a character he is. So I'm willing to call him a Rob fan.
Well, you got so excited when you heard Steve talk about how hard it was for men when it comes to pregnancies and what they have to go through. He was so fired up about that. I thought that was a funny moment to me. You could just hear the joy as that's so Steve, he says into the phone. Like, that was awesome. And then there was some pretty good riffing back and forth when they were talking about the Challenger documentary with him and Kirk, and talking about how Steve feels about, private school teachers versus public school teachers. I love that Big Cat does get the show references. He gets the show. He truly does listen. So anytime he's coming on, like, I'm fired up for it. And we got like an hour of it. And I was able to split up Thursday's show and Friday's show. And, you know, I'm on record. I love the Kirk and Steve show. And when they throw some guests there, even better for me. So, Ziggy, any final thoughts on the guests?
Which final thought to choose from? Well, as far as the, we'll keep it to one.
Please.
Kirk fathering Kate's baby. When they were saying, like, what would 3-year-old Kirk be like, and Big Cat was saying, like, oh, Mom, you're going to be very hypocritical with my nap. Yeah,
that was very good.
Well, short story short, my father gave me a tape he thought was blank, but was actually a tape of him nailing my stepmom.
Fuck it. Ooh, that's not incest.
So my question is, how long do you watch it?
How hot's your stepmom?
She wasn't bad looking. I mean, she was, then she was in her late 40s. She wasn't bad looking, but she's no Mama Geary.
Let me ask you this, Steve. So you're under stepmother fucking stepson in your mind is incest.
Stepmother fucking stepson
is incest. You said that. You said that last week.
Yeah. I think it is incest. Yeah.
Okay, so if he watches the video of his stepmom, was she like making a lot of noises? Was she kind of into it? Was she doing a good job?
It was impressive. There was oral sex. There was my father pile driving her in a frog type position. There was a lot going on.
Did you masturbate to it?
Oh no, I was watching it with 2 of my friends.
Is that incest, Steve?
For him to watch it?
No, to masturbate to a video of his dad plowing his stepmom.
Well, it depends on what the film angle was like.
Well, if his dad's in it, isn't that
like
incest?
if it shows your dad's face, then it's definitely incest.
What was your dad doing during it? Was he?
Oh yeah, it was a tripod.
Was your dad super into it? Was he loud or what?
Oh yeah, my dad was a freak.
All right, so we've got Matt Carano. We have some Justin thoughts. Matthew Carano. And
Carano.
Carano. Yeah, okay. So we got word about an email on Monday's show, and then they read it on Tuesday, I believe is how the timeline broke down. And so in that email, I got triggered because he did mention how he wanted to take over in perpetuity the YouTube channel, the network, and do fan, reaction shows, like maybe the Rundown. He would like to take over, and he'll be the executive producer for those things. And I got triggered a little bit. It bothered me as I have this labor of love that I do with you guys, and we do it as a hobby. So we're offering it up for Kirk for free, ad-free. This is not a DEC situation. In perpetuity, I would be happy to continue to do this. But we did get a little bit of the timeline, too, with that phone call to Kirk. The Carano email was sent Saturday morning. So that means that the information came out about Justin and came out about Mike, that week before. So there was a position opened up. There was a promotion given. And our boy Justin, who's a great guy, the intern, was given a little bit more to do, which he's done so on the YouTube channel. And we'll talk more about that with Ziggy. But I was triggered, man. I was fired up about Carano boxing out Justin, wanting the show to go to a subscription service. Bothered me to hear that timeline as well, kind of laid out as it goes. VD, you have some thoughts? Maybe something a little hot for Carano too. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, whoever that caller was, it was a great call to ask the question. Because
was he a caller or was he something else?
Yeah, same thing. Either way, it was that immediately when I heard that, Kirk teased it on Twitter, and my antennas went up just because the timing was a little suspect. So the questions did need to be asked, and the human part of me thinks like, oh, it's kind of a scummy move to see some money on the table for Justin and try to grab for it. But, the Robba fan in me, the dog eat dog kind of guy in me says, you got to do what you got to do, but you got to be ready for the criticisms of that. So the thing with me is he'll probably deny that. He'll probably deny that was motivated his decision to send that email at all. But we knew that email was coming even before his week was done. I think Kirk did ask him not to send it, but it's coming anyway. As Willie Blazer would say, shoot or shoot. So part of me understands it, but most of me is very happy for Justin. He deserves it. He's put in a lot of work for free. He's a great member of the Miniverse. He, just for me personally, every time I have to email him this rundown show, he stayed up late at night to make sure I can get it to him the night before. So he's been great to me. Really happy that he's getting some advancement in regards to the show. And I don't know, his Milton's trip will be interesting next week. I hope there's some video. I hope there's some video of that. But Ziggy, you're a big Carano defender. Let's hear you spin.
Please spin this.
Oh, well, first off, you said shoot or shoot. I think Steve eloquently said Carano just shot his shot on you, Kirk. Yeah. So you said what the human in you thinks that there's some spite there, and so for me, the rational brain naturally went to, well, first off, the person that likes drama and likes Minifan drama agreed with you, but the human with the kind of rational brain or able to take a step back doesn't agree, because I just think it was him once again making sure they were aware, even though they clearly are aware that he wants to work for the show. I didn't see it as a shot at Justin, and I don't think Justin took it as a shot at himself. But it is a little odd because the subscription services never seemed further away than it does now. His pitch was a lot of centered around the subscription service, so that is a little odd. But I just think it's natural business professionalism to follow up. So that's what he was doing. He's just making sure everyone understood. He wants. You can't knock him for wanting to work for the show.
No, I understand, but are you a rube? Were you born yesterday, Pollyanna? What are you talking about? This was clearly a move. This is a calculated email that was sent at that time to try to box out Justin and get that job.
Are you aware what the word clearly means?
Yes.
Very clearly.
Very clearly.
Ziggy,
Crystal.
you can't ignore the world around you. I mean, like I said, he has the right to take that shot, but to say it's just that that wasn't a motive for it at all is wild. And I'm guaranteeing you in the rest of that email that we didn't hear, he was very indirectly including stuff that he could do that Justin couldn't. I do think Kirk had a point when he said, oh, did he hear that Justin's going to be the fill-in producer and get his guard up, which he should, because if he wants to be the fill-in producer and he's getting Wally pipped, if he's getting swapped out, you know, he's got to fight for it. But the biggest thing is, I don't know, I guess I'm just happy for Justin, really.
Do you think Justin is Lou Gehrig in this?
Yeah. Also, I would say this, Ziggy, do you think there are or would you deny the fact that there are selfish motives for Carano wanting the show to go subscription? Like, even though the relationship is great at Barstool right now, he's been very clear that he would rather have it go subscription. And I think a lot of that is motivated by he wants to be a part of the show. At what point does that selfish nature start to become a little out of line? Because if he's as loyal as he says, Red has the clip, he'll fight for Kirk. He should want what's best for the show. And right now, after that interview with Portnoy last week, like, I don't think going subscription is where they're at right now. And eventually, will they? Probably. But right now, it seems like things are great.
And Ziggy, I want you to answer the question
there for me, because that was
you can answer that question. There's a question in there. But before you do, I just want to make it clear, like, I'm just here. I'm a protector of Kirk, and I'll protect him against enemies, you know, from the outside and inside. So I'm just here to protect him is all. But Ziggy, go ahead and answer that question. Go ahead.
I mean, there's leading the witness, and then there's whatever VD just did. I don't even know what the question was. It was so long-winded. Like I said, I don't see the ulterior motive. If it's that he wants to work for the show, then
yes,
sure, yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the one.
Obviously he wants to work for the show.
Yes,
right. Like VD's made it very clear in the DMs he wants to work for the show. So
false.
That's false. That's false. And don't try to sidetrack us with jokes. Don't do that. This is very serious.
I really
need to address this with this serious.
I'll be honest. He started talking, and I had that leading the witness joke in my head, and then he kept talking. So I kind of forgot the actual question.
To paraphrase, Carano would rather have the show go subscription because it would benefit him than he would have the show stay at Barstool because it may be best for the show. You can't deny that. He would probably admit that. Maybe not directly, but he said it in the past.
I forget what you just said. If that's the case, then I definitely don't want that. I don't want subscription right now. I want them to stay at Barstool. So if that means that you're trying to get me to say I don't want Matt to produce for the show, I don't want Matt to produce for the show. If it means
no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, you know, it has to be acknowledged that he does have selfish motives for wanting the show to go subscription.
We don't need to couch this any longer. Ziggy just said that he doesn't want Matt to produce the show, but we'll move on from there. We'll keep it.
Before we go on, I would like to disavow him directly saying he wants to host the weekly recap show. That's a direct shot at Red. Red's been having a great week, and he's put in a lot of work for this show, and just to come at him completely without warrant. I mean, Red's never said a bad word about Carano.
I've never said that.
It's a shot. It's a shot from
for no reason.
The funnier thing for me on the kind of the listing the resume was the suggesting new shows and events, which is like a classic resume filler. It's like saying you're proficient at Microsoft Word. It's like you just need a third thing on there. Right. I mean, we all. Why would that have to be part of the job description?
I'm a great team player. I've got good communication skills.
My biggest weakness is that I care too much. Yeah, we get it, Carano. We get it. It's okay. It's fine. So we'll move off of this because it makes you very uncomfortable, Ziggy. You don't want to say anything bad about anybody. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about
your questions very concise next time.
Okay. Ziggy will be in those Carano DMs before we are done recording.
Right away. Yes, absolutely. Even though you don't want him to produce the show at all, and you don't like him at all, and you don't think he's funny at all. Okay, so we're going to talk about Justin and how good Justin's doing, but also Ziggy. Kirk is a little concerned about these shows that are coming out. I think maybe you share those opinions too about these YouTube shows.
Yeah, I mean, I love Justin. I don't think he's Lou Gehrig, but I do love Justin. We'll get that out of the way. It was quite the bold move, in my opinion, to release this. So I saw the tweets, and I think I immediately sent you guys the tweets and was like this is huge. I was assuming it was like a concerted effort with at least Steve. Probably not with Kirk, but with at least Steve. And then nope, Justin just did it on his own. My initial reaction was like, that's a lot of Justin.
That's a big swing.
Especially because I think it was maybe RA mentioned on the OGs, like one of the big criticisms of Mike was his excuse for like the work he did outside of the show, not excuse, I can't think of the right word, but was that he did YouTube, but then the rebuttal was always, well, you're doing shows that aren't related to the show and that no one really cares about. And that's kind of what it on the surface seems like with this. It does. Justin did kind of, he went on the OG show briefly and kind of said it's not as big as they played it up. Like he's not involved in every single show, but yeah, that's a lot of shows to throw it at once. I really want Justin to be involved with the show, working for the show. I do think his time could be better suited than prepping for a show that probably won't get a lot of views, but I'm not his boss. So I guess it doesn't really matter what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would say until he has more on his plate, he should keep his plate full, So I have no problem with, taking a big first bite. Justin is, criticized for being timid at times on Justin and the Minifans, but I think this is a big sign that he's ready just to kind of start taking on responsibility. And you'd rather have a guy do that than kind of do nothing. And kind of to what you were saying, Ziggy, I think Mike's excuse, the worst part of his excuse was always like, oh, well, you're not going to like it anyway. And that always got me a little upset because it's just not necessarily a fair criticism. Kirk's going to shit on everything on the YouTube. So right. I have no problem with Justin, starting some stuff off. And if he has to scale it back later, he will. But I think it's a good example to set in the Miniverse. I will say, I hope Kingpin Pete is not getting cucked out of the gambling show, because I've been enjoying the Kingpin Pete gambling show. So hopefully he's involved in some way. But like Rez says, I love the inside stuff so much. Like, let's get claustrophobic. I want more YouTube, more everything at all times. So I will never hate on there being more YouTube shows, no matter how terrible they are.
I agree with that too, especially if it's not taking away from what Justin could be doing for the show. Maybe that's maybe that was an issue for Mike too. I don't know.
So on that point though, like from what we've seen with Justin the Minifans, he seemed to put a lot of work into that show with the preparation, at least much more than his predecessor. So I think there's an argument to be made, like, would he put the same amount of work into these other new shows? And assuming the answer is yes, because he's a hardworking kid, then there's only so many hours in the day. And it's just is it worth it? I don't know. So, but again, I think it's fine for him to do it for now. It was good content on Tuesday or Wednesday when it was brought up. So at least there was that. These shows will add content when they get made fun of at the very least. So that's always good.
Yeah. And Justin usually does a good job of providing at least a couple of clips that they can laugh at or pick at too. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, like you said, you don't get some guys boxed out, Kingpin Pete and the others. But it does fit some of the Minifan themes, whether it's the movies that Minifans are watching, some of the sports and gambling. I think there's a big.
Run through maybe? So say that again.
What's that?
You kind of cut out.
What did I cut out?
I'm going to run through them, and I'm going to give you real quick what Kirk's reaction, because I thought it was hilarious. So, movie director show. Kirk said lowest.
Yeah, I don't count the movie director show because that's not even a Justin
right.
one.
But Kirk's response was lowest viewed in YouTube history, all of YouTube history. Then he said, it sounds like hell on earth, and he would rather switch bodies with Ted. No, actually, I'd rather switch bodies with Eddie Van Halen. KMS bets. Kirk said, "Is this whole thing a parody? Like, is he doing a shtick?" And then, so this is a thing. He did his high-pitched what? Yeah. And he said 26 people will watch that. And then hang up the controller. He just said, "I'm out," and he threw his phone on the table. Yeah. So those were Kirk's reactions, which is kind of what I think Justin probably expected. But
well, I mean, they're going to be like 20-minute shows too. They're not going to be very long. So I don't think it's going to be time consumer form.
Are any of those more absurd than doing a recap show of the Cheers series, episode by episode? No. So everything's apart. Yeah.
That's a ridiculous purpose, especially when you factor in, as we covered, we talked about, he started doing the Cheers recap show when they took Cheers off of Netflix. So it was the worst timing to ever do that. Ever. I
don't think Justin's going to have much success if the bar he's trying to get over is just the bar that Mike set. Like I
won't
think
be hard.
you have higher expectations to reach. So
it won't be hard. I'll tell you that.
Well, Kmarko's a rat fuck, and he's proven he's a giant disgrace now. Can't believe what he called people of the African American race now. He should hang with DEC, because I heard they have a similar taste now. And he's a cunt, and he likes his girls to be underage. Well, he spends his time trying to figure out which blogs to spike now. This inbred fuck looks like his head was crushed in a vice now. Good morning. You know he had it bad when even Riggs can make fun of his eyes now. And he's a cunt. And he likes his girls to be underage. Well, he tells everyone his personality is only a shtick now. Knowing people like him even exist makes me want to be sick now. Hopefully, Willie Colon can make him eat his giant-sized dick now. And he's a cunt. And he likes his girls to be underage. Rest in peace, Kmarko. You're buried somewhere around here. Hopefully, you're probably hoping it's near JonBenet or Ramsey, obviously, for a number of reasons. But I'll be thinking of you. And here's your grave, and in your honor, and something I haven't done since the year 1983 or 1984. I'm going to do something I haven't done. I'm going to put my tap shoes back on and dance on your grave.
All right, so we got some random notes from the week. This is my favorite segment. It usually goes very long. I'm going to try not to be that long on this segment. Get out of the way because I know Ziggy has some hot takes to get to. My biggest thing is the callers this week. There were some really great callers. I'm going to ask you guys for your top 3 callers from this week. But last week talked about how I'm sick of the guys who just sit around and complain about the callers. I see it on Twitter. I see it on the subreddit. I'm just going to give you a couple of callers that led to some great things this week. And then we can leave it at that and be good with it, okay? So,
do you expect the people that complain about the calls to listen to this show?
Absolutely.
People don't like the Kirk Minhan show.
Some of them are Grateful Reds. I support, even though I disagree with them.
Okay.
I'm still going to.
Yeah, we had one on here last week, Fez, you know.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to talk through this a little bit. So obviously we had the Dan and Craig drama on Friday's show. And had Megan in there too, although Megan was a chatty Cathy. I'm glad Kirk told her to shut up. That was great. On Monday, we had Kingpin Pete defending Blind Mike. We had a Central Mass golf caller, which I hate the golf callers, but then it also led to Kirk sharing some of Dave Cullinane's ideas with Steve, which I thought was really good. I love Cullinane talk. The trivia game for Steve gave us the Courtney Love on Friends and led to Steve confusing Leah Remini and Patricia Heaton. Okay, later in the week, the Sigmund Freud caller talking about the hypocrisy of the Mike situation with Kirk, which led to Kirk being very upset, which hopefully stopped all of the Mike talk because I'm fucking sick of that, and Kirk has already addressed it. That was just on Monday. Then on Tuesday, we had the Trump caller. Okay, we got the Trump update. We found out that Peter Minahan hates Adam Minahan, which is great because I hate Adam Minahan, so that's awesome. We get the personal call about Kirk's dad and Terry Bear, which then Steve didn't bleep out that name, and I just said it. So there you go. Thanks, Steve. Best in the business. We had Lizzie the Liberal gave us the James Carville and George Carlin comparison from Steve. Michael J. Fox caller, which gave us a ridiculous episode of Love Boat, which I loved, obviously. Wednesday's callers. We got Donnie Darko caller, okay, which I love that movie. That's an awesome movie. I'm going to keep going. The guy who gave us the video of his dad fucking his stepmom and his father pile driving her in the froggy position. That led to Steve Robinson telling us the story about Joey, the sister fucker. Okay.
It looks like you're in your living room. Can you speak a little louder so everyone in your house knows?
This is unbelievable. This list. That's just a few of the callers. So I give that to you.
You're only saying that because you're a caller.
Oh yeah, I'm only saying that.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, those things don't happen without the caller segments. That's all I'm going to say. Ziggy, the floor is yours.
So a lot. I mean, I obviously love the calls as well because I love the whole show. And a lot of the things though, and this kind of hit me today. A lot of things you mentioned were like you said you like the call about Donnie Darko, and I like that call, right? And I like that call, so I like the movie. And we heard Kirk and Steve talking about that movie. I could see why someone wouldn't really care about that call because they don't necessarily care about Kirk's thoughts on every little thing in life. So I think there's the people that like the calls, and this is what hit me today. I think they more are fans of Kirk Minahan versus the Kirk Minahan show. And the Kirk Minahan show, the people that like kind of fell in love with the Kirk Minahan show, that maybe they are mincels or maybe they were just bigger like EEI, like the Kirk Jared dynamic. Those people like the original format of the show, which was more kind of going after the hypocrisy, which they still do, but it was heavier focus then. More structured of hitting segments and stories, and then more. I mean, there was inside jokes and prank calls and all that stuff, which we get some of now. But now there's also the second half of the show, the calls where we just get Kirk reacting to whatever is thrown at him. For people that are fans of Kirk Minahan, like I love it because I love to hear like how he will either like tell someone to shut the fuck up or read a book about shutting the fuck up because you're asking for a book recommendation, or sometimes he'll actually give an answer, like just that kind of dynamic that I appreciate. But I get why people wouldn't like it if they're more fans of like the general broader Kirk Minahan show that they were used to for 8 months until they started taking calls. So I disagree with those people, but I guess I get it. I just think the people that have been fans of Kirk for so long, we just want more Kirk and we want to hear his opinions and his reactions to people versus like the actual more concrete topics. I don't know if that made sense or not.
No, it does. It's the Kirk Minahan show. We all love it for different reasons. It's a different show.
Like you said, I don't have a hard time understanding why people don't like the calls. I mean, I love them, so I disagree with that wholeheartedly. But I think, and this is what you're getting at, Red, is I don't have a problem with people that don't like the calls. I have a problem with the people that complain about it incessantly and like think that they have some opinion that is so important, or, you know, I really just get mad about the people that are like, oh, I'm going to stop listening, or the show won't succeed if Kirk wants to keep taking calls. Yeah. And it just doesn't register with me because I don't know what these people are doing when they're listening to podcasts, but like me, I'm at work, I'm doing chores, I'm doing something. If there's a call I'm not that interested in, I just zone out for like 15, 20 seconds. And then the next thing I know, I'm roped in by some lunatic calling about, you know, topsoil. And then we have a 3-way debate with his brother-in-law going on. And those are just moments you can't replicate without having calls. And I get sick of the people too, who, you know, one day I pray every night that one day the contrarians of the show will realize that they are the same as the super fans. And they do the same exact thing that the super fans do, where if you try to stick up for the show or say you like a part of the show, they're just saying, oh, well, yeah, you just want to, you know, you're just trying to please Kirk, you're a clout chaser, you just want this. And then if you tell someone that, you know, you think they're wrong for not liking the calls, they just list this whole list of assumptions about you. Where it's just crazy. I will never understand why people take every second of this podcast so seriously, where they hold it to such a high standard. Like, you know, I watched a documentary about in the 1960s, like in some space shuttle, they were including just random things that if it ever got found by alien life, you know, it was just things that would explain our culture. So they tasked someone with making a vinyl record with like 10 songs on it. And the person talks about how they like put like maybe a couple months of thought into this and really planned it out. And there are tens of thousands of people on Twitter every day putting in that same work, critiquing every call. And the callers are just fans. you can't expect them to be wildly entertaining every time. And what's the big deal if they're not? And to people who say that the calls should be screened, I don't know how that works. What are you going to call in and say, oh, I'm going to do an impression of, I'm going to be Kirk's dad and I'm going to ask him about a golf. Like, you can't really explain it a lot of the time. You got to just roll with it, plan your call, do whatever. You're going to fail a lot of the time. And even when people fail miserably, Kirk, he'll just give them the, call back sometime in the future or whatever.
Right. And he makes the best of the bad stuff too.
Yeah. And I love the unpredictability of the calls. The people that complain about them incessantly drive me crazy. I think they're here to stay, and I hope so, because they do add an element to the show that's just is not possible to exist without them. And Ziggy, you had a good point on Twitter where so the yak is probably going off serious, and they were talking about how, we want to take calls, and like the instant first two replies to the tweet was one person being like, the calls are the worst part of the show, I hate it, and then another person being like, we need the calls are what make the show roll. So this isn't really I don't think a KMS issue. I think everything in this miniverse gets amplified to be the most important thing in the world because people just care about the show that much. So I enjoy the calls. I get sick of the people complaining. That's really what I have.
I will say that documentary you just talked about, I'm glad you didn't call the show and tell Kirk about that, because that would have been a bad call.
I would have put my prep in. I'm shooting from the hip right now. What are you going to do?
You made a good point, though, that I was trying to say earlier, but I couldn't think of the words. That it's the randomness of it, where I think if they did screen calls, it would be in order to make it kind of more segmented. Like if they want to take very specific calls on a specific subject, which is like a very radio thing to do, and that's what's nice now is it's not a radio way they're taking calls. It's just a free for all, which I like. I could see them if they wanted to change it up and kind of find a middle ground there to appease some people, but I don't think Kirk cares about appeasing people. He likes it, so he does it.
I just think screening it takes some of the magic. Like the guy who was calling about the backyard labor dispute, what's he going to tell a call screener that isn't going to sound insane? Like,
right. Well, I think
how is a call screener ever supposed to discern that like this might be one of the most weird, like one of the most interesting, weirdest calls in show history, just because Kirk's initial reaction to whatever is said first takes the call in a million different directions.
I think that's a good point. Or the reason that people would argue for the screening is you would not get the golf calls or the movie calls because a screener would just say no. But yeah, you're not going to get you're not getting the really bad calls, but you're also missing the really out of nowhere good calls if you had a screener. So right now it's like there's a range, and obviously we all think that it's worth sitting through a bad call or like continuing your work and not focusing 100% to get to the good calls.
Yeah, and it's more show that you get. I mean, you could always I guess you could not listen, but that's the other thing too, is these guys who say that they don't listen, I don't fucking buy it. So Fez, like, there's no way you're not listening to these calls, man. There's no way, especially on a Friday when a majority, it's such a caller heavy show on that Friday that they cut. Like, there's no way. You guys are lying. So anything else on the random notes from this week, Ziggy?
Yeah. Go ahead, Ziggy. I had Steve gets these buzzwords which always entertain me, and I think gut biome has been said for 3 weeks in a row on the show.
I think
Steve has been mentioning the gut biome a lot. So clearly,
I have that on my bingo card. Yeah,
he read an article about gut biome, and that stuff just sticks in the front of his head, and it's always so interesting to me. Those few things he kind of latches onto.
So the big one today was Robinson Academy, which was a funny segment. However, if Steve was trying to dispel the rumor that he is a flaming lib, he did a terrible job at it, because first he said that they wouldn't be teaching like true conservative idealisms like the sanctity of marriage. I mean, that's a lib move to not teach that, right?
Yep.
Secondly,
total lib.
No corporal punishment if students break the rules. That is a lib move.
Yep.
And lastly, he said he would give affirmative action scholarships. That is a huge lib move. So is this really Robinson Academy? Is it really to indoctrinate the liberal youth to become conservatives, or is it the other way around? I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
I'm
just asking. That was a very, very liberal conservative camp. That
sounds like, if I may, VD, it just sounds like Steve's wife maybe is the head of school of Robinson Academy.
All I hear is Ziggy's gums clapping together because there's just no teeth in anything he throws at Steve. Like, I hate to be the wet blanket on the party, but the Steve is a lib joke. It's funny to bust his balls over. Steve is not a lib. We all know this. You often criticize him for being, actually I'd say 99.9% of your criticisms are that he's too conservative, too into right-wing politics. So for you to just backtrack, I guess I should.
This week there's a noticeable shift. I mean, going to the march did that not surprise you?
He's a supportive husband. Sure. And just because you're at the march, he's doing boots on the ground observation. He doesn't trust the media. He's not going to just read about it. He's the type of guy that wants to see it for himself. He probably wrote in his journal about it. Who knows?
So how about the fact that he didn't know Bush's chief of staff? It took him 30 seconds of stammering to finally.
Oh, he's just being humble. He's just being humble there. He knew it. He's being humble.
And on the march topic, so yeah, he said he went to the march, even though for a long time talking about coronavirus, he said that those are super spreader events. But then when he was talking to Big Cat and they were talking about Florida allowing 70,000 people in the stadium, and they were talking about how insane it would be for those people to go, Steve said, "Oh, there were insane people protesting in the streets and going to rallies," which is exactly what he did. It's just, I don't know. It's either
he didn't say all people. He didn't say all people in the streets are insane. He said there are insane people protesting, which is true. There are people out there burning down businesses, shooting each other.
Unbelievable.
Well, I mean, we can go down the list. I put that list out there. We continued with it. I mean, he's never actually voted for a Republican, VD. So, I mean,
he doesn't have his license to carry in Massachusetts.
He lives in Massachusetts. It's a blue state.
He seemed very aware of those Utah license to carry loopholes.
Steve is
left the Howie Carr show on his own volition.
Yeah.
You guys you try to put Steve into a box that he'll never fit into because Steve is a multi-dimensional character.
No, you're right. And we thought the box was that he was a hardcore conservative, but he actually gathered that box because he's a part lib. It's fine.
He's one of the main reasons why I respect Steve so much is he's one of the few right-wing guys who will criticize Trump, who will admit that the right does crazy stuff. Would he have ever done that on Howie Carr? Obviously not, but it just shines a light on how Kirk has helped him become himself. He's brought it out of him. He's brought the honest Steve out. He's never lied. He has never lied.
Maybe Kirk brought it out of him, but I think maybe his wife told him to say that too. Maybe it sounds like his wife is talking through him.
No, it's about growing up and maturing.
Happy wife, happy life. There's no judgment here. I'm not saying. Just saying.
Would the DC sleuth behave like this? No, the DC sleuth probably wouldn't be in the same room as a lib, but he's grown and evolved and matured, and that's why he's the man he is.
She's driving the Honda Fit. That's okay. That's all right. She's driving.
I think he has a new car because didn't you say that the AC died and it wasn't worth getting fixed? On the case.
You should know. It should be in your file.
Yeah, probably in your file. Any other random notes?
Yeah, I mean, the fake Steve tweet this week, I'm sure it didn't get any of us, but it obviously got enough people, which was kind of a funny thing that happened. But it was hearing Steve kind of say that he's not going to leave the show. He'd have to be dragged out of the show. Somewhat devastating to hear.
And he doesn't have a contract?
That's true. Still, he's employed at will. But in the old cartoons, when a pie is pulled out of the oven and the character like Mickey Mouse gets dragged by their nose at the smell of the pie, that would be Steve if there was a pile of money bigger than what he's getting now. He would just be towards that money in a heartbeat. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And Kirk today asked if he had gotten an offer, right? And he was like, no. And it's that inflection where there was a lie in there. Think about it. Yeah, I'm not going to say it was a straight out lie, but there was no in there. So, yeah.
Credit to Steve for not needing a contract, being still that loyal. And even if he did get a job opportunity, whatever, he turned it down. So it's just more examples of his loyalty. And to accuse him of that he would jump ship for money, that's a wild claim, because I think he was getting paid more at Howie Cart, and he left that secure job where he had a very secure future to come latch onto this thing that's basically a startup and help build it from the ground up. So he's loyal. Kirk says it time and time again. To accuse him of being anything other than that is blasphemous.
Well, we now know he left Howie Cart because he couldn't live the lie that he was living of pretending to be a conservative.
Maybe his wife told him to leave the show too. I don't know.
She has the hand.
She has the hand.
Keep reaching. You'll throw your shoulder. You'll pop your shoulder out.
Okay. Anything else on the random notes?
No.
Hot, steamy buffalo chicken shits.
All right. So it's the after show. Here is where we get into some of the deeper topics. And there's not a lot of Miniverse stuff to get into. There's not a lot of drama. I don't know if that has to do with our boy Menners being away, and I don't know what happened to him, but there's not a lot of that inside Miniverse stuff. But we did get Kirk's Periscope today on Friday, talking about Kmarko, and Kmarko has been moved away as editor-in-chief, still obviously working for Barstool, but it has changed from listening to Dave Portnoy's podcast. And so we had Kirk's Periscope today where he literally was tap dancing on somebody's grave, and you could hear a woman in the background. I can't imagine what that person is thinking as he is just twinkle toes on the other side of somebody's grave. Like, it was just insane to see. Loved it. You had the Steve's a Liar song, the passage from him too. So this was a good Friday Periscope, but we did not have the live Friday show. And I saw some chatter about it on the subreddit. VD, I think maybe you saw some of it on Twitter. What were your thoughts not having the live to tape Friday show for this?
Yeah. I mean, I really don't give a shit personally. It doesn't make a difference to me. I have similar feelings about other things. Like, I can't watch sports if it's not live or whatever, but the Friday shows are usually call based. And I mostly saw chatter about people being like, oh, they have to go back in studio to record about the Kmarko thing and stuff. But I think if you get in the habit of that, there's going to seemingly be something every Friday, where I think last week it was, oh, Trump got COVID. And I don't think you have to go to at least I don't go to the show for like breaking news. Sometimes even getting Kirk's take on things a couple days later is better. Like, a lot's probably going to develop in that. So me, I don't mind it at all. I didn't see a ton of criticism of it, but the people in the Miniverse, they got to have stuff to criticize, and they'll latch on to anything. But I think the overwhelming majority of people don't mind at all.
Yeah, I liked it too. I like that you referenced that, because there was I think there's the George Floyd incident. There was a couple of days before Kirk had gotten to it. I think it was a Sunday night taping and YouTube show. Just because of the way the timeline worked for the show, Kirk didn't address it as it was happening. It was good to get his take on it days later after we'd seen everything else that had happened. So I kind of do like having that break in between. I didn't mind not having the Trump update, the Friday show, and the Periscope for me was good. It was funny, and there was lots of other things to react to from the show. But Ziggy, what were you thinking today?
Yeah, it was funny. I think Kirk said like he could see them coming in to do a Friday emergency taping if maybe if Trump died. So it's like, okay, well, if the president dies, then they'll come in. So I guess that's the bar that yeah, I mean, we don't, like, at least us three, we don't listen because, like, we like, let me back up. Any emergency Minifan infighting that happens, that's the stuff that I would want him to come in to talk about. The other stuff I don't care, because I just don't follow like world news or politics enough to care for their live reactions. So I kind of like the breakup. The breakout, getting, if they continue this way of the Thursday morning of hopefully having a guest in and not taking calls and then doing calls at night. I think you definitely get different callers at night. You have a wider range of, there's some people that have never called, you can tell, because they usually can in the mornings. But it is nice to know that they're recording at night, and then you can just kind of, you can react to the stuff that was said in the morning. Like, those are always good to have calls that they're coming in from the previous show, reacting to that. Yeah, I don't really care, and I don't care if people care either.
I like that. Did you hear the Portnoy's podcast with Kmarko, the Kmarko news, but everything else, it seemed like, I don't know, other than KMS, this is my favorite podcast to get to. It seems like everything is Kirk is doing with Erica's podcast too. Today that was taped. Seems like there's a lot more Barstool information coming out, and it seems like Kirk was right on a few things. So I'm loving this Barstool relationship, how these podcasts are coming out. I loved it today with the Periscope, like I said. I don't need to have anything more than that. And when it comes to the Miniverse, like that's the good stuff for me. I love that shit too. Yeah. So and I didn't need anything else other than that Periscope.
So I woke up this morning and I checked my phone and I saw the Periscope. And the first thing I saw was someone, I think it was not Kirk's burner, like clipped Kirk just doing tap dancing. Yeah. And I was like cracking up, and my wife asked like what I was laughing about. So I showed her and I explained it like, oh, well, the editor-in-chief beef with Kirk and they hate each other, and he got fired, and so he's dancing on his grave. And she didn't hear me say he got fired, so she thought he died, and he was like literally dancing on his but she wasn't like appalled by that or like shocked. It's like from what her information, her understanding of Kirk is just brief, like little things I tell her. So yeah. She thought Kirk was so petty that he would actually dance on Kmarko's grave if he died, which he, in fairness, he probably would.
Probably would. Yeah.
But yeah. That clip of him dancing was like,
that's so good. When it comes this week with the we got news from live show information, but also new merchandise is on the way. There's also some Schurzy stuff that was in there too. I'm excited for new merchandise, and it seems like when there's new merchandise, at least it feels like to me that the Barstool relationship is getting a lot better. Big Cat referenced that too. Like it just feels like subscription service is further and further away, which I'm a huge fan of staying away from that and staying with Barstool because you get all this Big Cat stuff and everything else with Barstool. So.
Yeah, shout out to Harrison, the intern. I think I previously have called him a nerd in jest, but if he's the driving force behind a lot of new merch stuff, that's awesome. I think the people are hungry for it. So that's great. I had a similar situation, Ziggy, with my brother who I live with. He doesn't listen to the show, but he follows Kirk on Twitter, and he kind of has going into that with no context. He's like, what was he doing? And I was like, oh, yeah. He's just quite literally grave dancing, and I got a very similar reaction where he's like, "Jesus Christ," kind of like that Jesus Christ you get after Kirk hangs up on like a bizarre call or something. Just like what is going on in the world? So it's a great show moment, and I have to apologize to Dave Cullinane because Kirk Minahan is actually the #1 most electric periscoper of all time. Anytime I see that he goes on Periscope, I'm like, oh shit, like something's happening. Something's going on, and they always end up being electric. So Cullinane, he's a close #2, but I got to give the nod to Kirk on that.
Wow. And Ziggy, you're a big softball guy. I'm assuming maybe you'll get a Schurzy or something that you can wear for your softball game.
I have a Adam Banks, what is it, the Hawks from Mighty Ducks Schurzy.
Yes.
So I'm a big Schurzy guy. Actually, I don't know why Steve like pooh-poohed that idea so quickly today. He made a comment about how, that'll never happen. So that was
he's a humble guy. He doesn't like
that was
similar.
I honestly don't know what it was. I don't know if it was it almost seems like there's issues with Barstool getting merch up, at least if I'm reading between the lines there. But I will say though, shout out to Harrison. Also shout out to Justin. I know one of his pushes is also to get more merch up there. So the boots on the ground are putting their work in there.
One last thing I kind of wanted to get your guys' idea on is I think it was on Mincel Intel that they had the idea that kind of grabbed my attention. I thought it was smart. Like if there was like a 10-minute video that at the end of every week, like a 10-minute kind of best of clips, moments from the show that would get blogged on Barstool. Like I do think that would be very impactful. Obviously, they've had issues trying to get up on the blog before, and it's not like a groundbreaking idea, like, oh, you should post more on the blog to get more people to listen to the show. But I do like that idea of kind of just a 10-minute like best of show every week to kind of help paint the picture to people at Barstool of what this show is. Because if they're not going to really promote it like it deserves to be promoted, then I think that could be a cool way to kind of communicate to the stoolies about what's really going on in the Miniverse.
Yeah, you can do a little bit of your own self-promotion there. I think that was BA's idea. I want to give him credit for that.
Very good idea from Will.
Oh, was it
BA.
Will?
It was BA.
I was Will, yeah. I don't think BA.
Yeah, so it was a very good idea from Will. I think it was definitely Will. But if they did
those words have never been said.
I think
don't overthink it, Red. Come on.
Don't overthink it. I had a good conversation, a little back and forth with Cullinane about this, just listening to the Portnoy podcast, where they could do something like this for their blogs and it would really help. If Barstool did it, obviously, but if Justin or whoever, if Steve could delegate that task, if they could do something like that to blog more, it would really help, because Barstool, we're seeing a growth. It just feels like it's getting bigger with everything financially that they're putting into it, obviously with the Penn deal and with Barstool Bets. Barstool is growing, and I think Kirk Minahan show will grow with it, just being a part of it. Another plus for not being a part of the subscription service too. So I think that was a great idea.
Yeah, get ready to roll your eyes here, because I'm going to go back to what I always say, that this is why I think it really falls on Steve to have a good relationship with Barstool as the executive producer. There you go. Thank you. Because he could delegate, he could cut that up, or he could have an intern do it. But really the promotions team, like there's people at Barstool that's main job is to cut video for the content at Barstool. So that's something they should be doing if there was cohesion there. But I mean, again, I get Kirk saying that he doesn't want promotion, but I still think that falls on Steve to do it because it's good for the show, which is for Kirk.
Kirk did tease that in his tweet today about the Erica podcast. This is all Steve's fault.
True. He's been listening to me.
No, I mean, we'll see. I'm gonna wait for all the facts to come out and ask for some examples. That's what I'll do. Any
final thoughts? I'm gonna go VD first because I know Ziggy's gonna go long. So
yeah, I do think it deserves recognition. This isn't exactly a main show thing, but Ziggy Robinson has been listening to this podcast for how long? Almost a year and a half, right?
Long time, yeah.
He has been using this shitty podcast app that distorts the sound so badly. It sounds like it's coming through the speakers of like a 92 Corolla.
The worst.
And I am starting to understand maybe why he hates Steve. If the sound was that bad, I would probably hate the producer too. So being the great guy I am, the Rob fan, we like to help people, even our enemies. Take notes, America. I suggested to Ziggy, how about you get like a normal app, maybe Google Podcasts or something like that, and instantly the audio is crystal clear. So hat tip to me for helping Ziggy, my nemesis, who I love to hate. But how insane are you for listening to the podcast 5 days a week?
Defend yourself. You're the worst. You're the worst.
You know that I notoriously have peanut butter in my ears. So that's part of it. I mean, I have no excuse. I mean, my excuse would be, why didn't you tell me earlier? Because I send you guys clips all the time and no one corrected me on it. However, it is a testament to how good the show is that I persevered through the poor audio quality all this time and still love it as much as I do.
Thought you were going to somehow blame Steve for this. I thought you were going
it honestly is a testament to like how great the show, because I mean I can't stress enough. It was
bad. It was really bad. It was really bad.
It sounded like you're making it seem like it sounded like LK's mic on the Minifan show praising Kirk. It didn't sound that bad. It was more like Will's mic, where it's a little quieter, it's a little fuzzier.
The worse LK's mic is, the better for us, because the last thing you want is to hear anything that guy has to say.
Oh man, that's my guy. Wow, that hurt. That cut me. Ziggy, final thoughts, please.
Calling out Minifans. So Minifan X, another week where he's caused some buzz on Twitter, and there is a rhetoric going around where there's a lot of people taking shots at him. I'm a facts guy and a numbers guy, very analytical. So I have two numbers for you, 15 and 0. 15 is the number of days since Minifan X has been in the Miniverse. 0 is the amount of content he has provided for the main show. Another week without prank calls made, parody songs written, or calls into the show. So we'll see if week 3 is the week that he finally steps up. I don't know. He's doing the YouTube rounds, but we want main show content because that is what he promised when he made his triumphant entrance into the world.
Wow. Well,
I don't know. He probably will not respond to me. That doesn't seem like something he would do.
Oh, well. Well, So those are strong words, Ziggy, and we appreciate you having those strong words. We're going to end tonight's broadcast with a PSA from no other than Minifan X, who is going to address the haters like Ziggy for saying slanderous, rhetoric? What was it?
Dangerous rhetoric.
Dangerous rhetoric that Ziggy and others are throwing around. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, Kirk Minahan Show. I'm not
thank you, Steve.
Thank you,
Steve.
And thank you guys. And we're gonna give it here to Minifan X and take you guys into the weekend.
What's up, fuckers? Minifan X here. No throwing up the X's tonight. No gimmicks. No shams. I'm here to address something. It was brought to my attention by my good buddy VD, someone who actually wants to give someone a platform to explain themselves as opposed to just attacking somebody blindly on a show and then expecting them to hear about it secondhand and not have a chance to respond. Well, here we go. You guys think that I'm coming out here, shots fired, guns a-blazing, throwing up the X, doing all this gimmick stuff, and not backing it up. And I can understand where you're coming from if you didn't listen to a fucking word I've said so far or on Twitter. My whole point of this entire thing, especially about the YouTube, is that we all need to slow the fuck down. If I came out with a stupid-ass video or stupid-ass YouTube show or called into the show and had nothing funny or even provided any sort of content whatsoever, what good would that possibly do? Wouldn't you rather me or anyone else take their time, make something good, and actually provide something of quality to either the show or the YouTube channel? That's the whole goddamn point, guys. But you have people like Mayo and Menners who have come before me and have ruined it for the rest of us who are trying to make a difference in this network. You guys are all included in that as well, because they come out here guns a-blazing and then they step in a pile of shit because they're full of it. That's the difference. I'm not full of it. I actually like the show. I actually listen to the show. I want the show to be as good as it can possibly be. I also want the YouTube channel to be as good as it could possibly be. So instead of shitting on me for not putting out as much content as you would have liked me to up until this point, how about a little respect and care for actually making content that's going to be worth putting out whenever it's actually put out? And that's not chasing clout. That's saying I want to make something good that not only Kirk hopefully will enjoy, but you guys will enjoy as well when you watch it. That's the whole fucking point. I'm out.